Hello, I'm Justine Zimmelis, and I will be going over our Excel tool, which provides a mechanism for managing individual level data and created automated and customizable reports that can be used for different audiences. So when you first open up our Excel tool, the very first thing you need to do is just ensure we have our macros enabled. If macros are not enabled, which will likely be the case when you open the workbook for the first time, you just need to click this button at the top, Enable Content. Macros are simply the underlying code for the various functions created within the workbook. Typically, the next time you open the form, that will already be enabled. So the copyright page will be the first worksheet visible upon opening the file. And every time you open the workbook, you will be asked to agree to the copy. All right. Hopefully everyone can see the Excel tool now. So I'm just going to click the Enable Content button for the macros again. And here we just have a pop-up message to approve the copyright information. All right, so within this tool, we have multiple worksheets, which you will find within the tabs below here. And I will be going through each of these. Our raw data worksheet is the vessel for containing all of the individual level data for both demographic data as well as the referral tracking and screening information. So those forms that we just went over can be entered here. The data needs to be in the format provided in this worksheet in order for the automated reports to function correctly. And we have three options for integrating your program's data into this worksheet. And we have these explained here in the data integration worksheet. The first option we have is to use the assessment forms that have been built into Excel. So here we have a button, Assessment Forms, and we have both the demographics and the screening and referral tracking forms integrated into Excel. So these forms are going to look just like our paper forms, with the exception that the for office use section is listed first. So here you can directly type in your program data. So I'm just going to type in some fake information. So my participant ID, staff ID, and date. And we have some data validation within this to reduce user error. So for example, if I try to type in a future date, it highlights the cell. You could not have assessed your client in the future, and it does not let me continue until I correct the date. Now I can continue on with the form. So you go through the form through these tabs. Here, this is exactly the same information we have on those forms we have provided. So here we have the demographic survey. Go through, select your options. And here we have the screening and referral tracking form. Then at the end, you go to the Save Data tab and click the Submit button. The data you enter here is only submitted once you click this button. It is not automatically filled in as you type. The data is only entered once you hit this button. Now a new line has been added to my raw data worksheet. So this is the data you just saw me enter in here. And if you made a mistake while you were filling out these forms, you can manually change them here. So if I entered the wrong date or something similar, I can just retype it in here. So this leads me to the second option for integrating data into this spreadsheet. You can manually enter your data directly here. Simply type in the data using a new line for each participant. And as you can see, there's a message box over each cell that displays the item and the codes that are applicable. So here it tells me to enter the participant ID, staff ID, etc. And here we have one of our program types that are on our forms, prevention program. This was a checkbox, so here it's telling me enter 1 if it was checked, enter 0 if it wasn't checked. So this way you know immediately when you're entering the data here, what are the applicable codes. We also have a code book provided here if you want to see each of the variables and what code is applicable to those variables. I'm going to go back to the raw data spreadsheet. We also have some data validation here to reduce user error. So for example, if I try to type in 2 here, I get an error and it tells me what are the actual values that are allowed here. So this way you can do less data cleaning. Now we have another option for integrating data into this spreadsheet. So I'm going to go back to my instruction worksheet. So if you already have data in another source, such as a data collection system your program uses, you can import the data here. And you would do this if you want to use the automatic reports that Excel provides, but you don't want to enter the data into this spreadsheet. So I would click import data, and then you would browse for your file. So you would want your data formatted in the same way as this tool and saved in a comma delimited file. And so the formatting, you would want to cross-check with our codes worksheet to see that you have the same variable names and codes for each of your data elements. So then you would browse for your data, open the file. I'm not going to do an example of that. And it would just directly fill into the raw data spreadsheet. All right, in sum, we have these 3 methods to import data into the raw data spreadsheet. So that is just a way to get your individual level data into the system. Now, once you have the individual level data and you are ready to create your aggregate reports, you would go to this report setup worksheet. Here, we provide specifications that are needed to create the reports. First, you will need to type in the dates corresponding to the reporting period you are interested in. So this represents the assessment dates you want included in your report. You can type in whatever date range you want, whether you want the data for an annual report or if you want to create an internal quarterly report for your program use. The report will only take 1 line of data for each participant ID. If you have multiple data entries with the same participant ID, it will take the most recent assessment completed by the participant. Note these dates are referring to the assessment dates as entered onto the forms, not when the assessment was entered into the system. So here I just have 2016 to 2017 entered. The next step is filtering. If you want to include all the participants in your data set, click the button Include All Participants. This is useful if you're unsure if someone has previously set a filter on your data set and you want to remove all potential filters. We also provide 3 automatic filters. So you can filter by program name here. So I have a program called Test Program A, and I would then click this button, and it filters so that only those with Test Program A in the line of data will be included in the reports. We also have a filter for program type with a drop-down, so these include the required and optional program types. So you can click one of these and filter by program type, and now only my prevention programs will be included. We also have a filter for strategy, again with the drop-down menu. We do have a limitation that you cannot apply multiple automatic filters at the same time. However, if you need to do so, you can manually apply filters. Let's say, for example, that I want to first filter by program name and then filter by program type. I would first enter the program name here and filter, and then I would manually change the other filter within the raw data spreadsheet. So the filter is captured by this last column in the raw data spreadsheet called filter participant. So here we have a dummy coded variable. You enter 1 if you want the person included in the reports, and a 0 if you want them excluded. So you can manually go through and see which people you want included, and if you have someone with higher data analytical skills, they can create a formula that will say, for example, if this person has a substance date, so if something is filled in this cell, include, otherwise exclude the data. All right, I'm going to go back to report setup. So for now, I'm just going to run one on just all of my test program A. So I'm going to filter by test program A, and as you can see, I have a lot of 1s now in this column, and some 0s here because I also have a test program B included in my file. All right, now back to report setup. Here we have a section to specify your program information. So this is simply information that gets added to the header of your report. So again, I'm going to say test program A, then it asks what strategies, and I did not filter by any of these strategies, so I'm just selecting all strategies. Here you can also specify if you did an additional filter on your data. So for example, if you decided you only wanted to look at males, you could type in males only. This way you know that is what you filtered by for this report. Once you're done setting up all of your filters and you're selecting your dates, you would click this Process Data button. And depending on how much data you have and your computer specifications, this could take up to a few minutes. As you see, I only had about 200 participants, so that was pretty quick to set up. Now we are provided with several automated reports. The first report you are provided is the data dashboard. This dashboard provides a visual display of the data. Here you have information about each variable, including the number and percent of participants who selected each response. Both demographic data as well as screening and referral tracking data is displayed here. So here I have the total number of people in my program, age, veteran status, all of these require demographic information, including the supplemental items that San Diego has added to our form. And at the bottom over here, we have our screening and referral tracking section. And the great thing about these reports is that they are provided in a printer-friendly format. So I'm going to show you, if I wanted to print this report, I would first save it as a PDF. And as you can see, this fits beautifully on single pages, so you can show this to different stakeholders. This data dashboard can be useful for internal use to quickly and easily see what is going on in your program. It can also be useful as a report for different stakeholders, such as the program coordinator. San Diego County currently uses a dashboard like this to monitor what is going on within the program. Now we have a second report that is generated in the tables worksheet. Here we have the same information, but displayed in a simplified table format. This is also provided in a printer-friendly format where everything will fit nicely on single pages. This is another great tool for local use to get a detailed look at your program demographics. And both the data dashboard and tables worksheets have a notes section. While all of the individual level data collected in the forms is displayed in the report, aggregated, there are a few additional elements that should be added to your report for the report submitted to the state. For example, for your outreach programs, you need to describe the settings in which potential responders were engaged. This is not pulled at the individual level, so you would need to add this to your report. So please refer to the PEI regulations to determine the additional reporting requirements. Finally, processing the data adds to our report worksheet. While the data dashboard and tables worksheets are used for one program and strategy at a time, this report provides a format for the creation of a county-level report for submission to the state. Each time you process your data, a new line with all of the same information we just saw in the tables display is included in this report worksheet. So here we have a timestamp. So I just created this report, and it has the program name, the strategies, and then here we have all of that aggregate information all in one row. And here I have just a few other samples that I created. So here I did one on just the timely access to services strategy. The PEI flowcharts we showed you earlier can help guide you through what filters you will need to use for each program type and strategy within a program. When the regulations indicate that you need demographics for a particular subset of participants, such as those who followed through on a referral, you simply need to filter the data to select that subset and run the report. You would then specify in the report what subset you have filtered for. So again, it didn't fill out the program type here or what county, so you would manually enter that in, but all of the rest of the data gets automatically entered into this spreadsheet. So by filtering the data, you can easily run the reports for each set of demographic information that you will need to fulfill the reporting requirements and have them all in one place. So we would just have a new line for each program and each strategy, all within this report. So now if I want to go back, let's just quickly filter for another program. So I have test program B, filter by program name. This will now reset that filter column. So my first participants were in test program A. Now that has a 0, so it will be excluded. And then we have ones at the end where I have my participants with test program B. So I'm just going to rename it here and process the data. Now I have a new dashboard with all the information from test program B. Again, the same information in my tables report. So here, this was a sample that I made up for older adults. So I have all my participants are older adults here. And a new line of data has been added to my report spreadsheet. So it did override the dashboard and tables report. So those you would want to save as a PDF for your reference. but it has maintained that previous line that I created for test program B. So here I have test program A, all of that information, and a whole new line of data for test program B. So as you can see, if you have your data in our raw data spreadsheet, which you can get through multiple methods, you can easily create reports for both internal use as well as a place to have your aggregate data across all of your programs within the county. So I'm going to take a minute to look at questions, and then Kyle Choi will be showing you another system that San Diego currently uses.
All right, thanks, Justine. This is Andy again. I'll turn over to Kyle in just a moment here. We're doing well on time. I am going to take a moment to answer a few questions that have come up here that are relevant to what Justine was just talking about. So as far as when this will be available, it is ready now, and so we are, and so we will be, and so very soon we will be able to put it. So we'll be up on the OAC website, I believe, very soon. And that's where you'll be able to get that. And we do realize that people will be anxious to not have a wait time between this meeting and when they'll be able to get it there. As far as it is designed for PCs, and so yes, it doesn't work on every possible device. It is designed for PC computers. And now I'm going to answer a couple of these questions with just a blanket sort of explanation. People are asking about how the data comes together. What about multiple people putting in data and such? And so to answer those, of course, there could be multiple people typing into the same spreadsheet, but of course, as only one person could be using the spreadsheet at a time in that case. So definitely there. So the spreadsheet, your administrator would have it closed. You'd want to have your administrator have it closed to other people entering data when someone had it open, was entering data. And
yeah, so we would recommend that you keep a separate file for each person entering data, and then you can simply copy and paste them all into one spreadsheet when you're ready to create the report.
Right. Thank you, Justine. That was exactly what I was thinking towards. That certainly, when you think about, this seems really smooth on a small individual level, but then you think about, well, what about our multiple clinicians, multiple folks? That yes, as Justine said, the idea would be that not only different clinicians, but possibly different agencies would have their own copy of the file, and so within an agency, those could be monthly or however often is needed, rolled up together to create the aggregate data set for that agency. And of course, at the county level, these could all be rolled up to one huge file. And to remind folks, nope, there's no cost associated with using this. And that gets me to another question, that of course, this is a learning collaborative that OAC is running to hear more from folks about their needs. And so hopefully this tool really helps with those needs. And it does have some built-in instructions and directions, but some folks have mentioned in the questions, perhaps a need for future training and or manuals. So that is something to maybe that OAC would be willing to hear about those needs from people, but also thank you, Justine, for all you explained, that actually the recording of this webinar isn't a bad manual in itself, in terms of Justine did go through in some detail of how to use it, how to get your data into it, and that sort of thing. And I do think for this sort of tool, perhaps video, again, like the recording of this webinar, if not it, may be a better tool for learning it than a manual of many pages.
So someone asked about editing the forms. So if you were to edit the forms, you would still need to use our variable names within the spreadsheet for it to function correctly. But if you have someone with Excel expertise, they could edit the underlying code to have it function to create the report.
Yeah. And I'm going to address one other possible limitation on multiple referrals. That is something we talked about internally in San Diego County just recently again, and trying to kind of stick with, at this point, we were thinking at the person level. So at the person level, if we have one person who had one referral that was successful, then we have a 100% success rate at our referrals. If we have one person who got 3 referrals and ended up in services through one of those, but we gave them 3 possibilities, I don't want to count that as only a 33% success rate. That person was, the PEI was successfully gotten into services by PEI, and so we are thinking very much at the person level. So bringing that back to the form and this sort of thing, that does involve editing, right? And we may make that what we finally put into our data set would be the record of the successful referral would be the most important one to be recording as far as at the person level. While again, San Diego County, we have on our personal level, we have done some things in other ways to look at the referral level data. But I don't think that is what's being required by the state. I think the state is requiring person level data. Was this person referred to services, and did they make it to get services? And last question I'm going to address related to that directly actually came from the last section on what do we count as a first service? Is that just if they go and get a screening, or do they actually have to start to get treatment, true, assessment things? Because sometimes people go for screenings at a clinic and it doesn't work out that they actually, that ends up being the place that they get ongoing treatment. And I hope I'm speaking correctly for San Diego County when I say we have encouraged our programs to record when they get to the clinic and get services, and a screening would count as they got there and got a service. And I totally, that'll be something up for discussion perhaps in terms of any other opinions from OEC or others in terms of how, that we could discuss later in terms of what amount of service do they need to get in order for us to say, yes, it was a successful referral. And one more question Justine's going to answer, I think. And then, again, we're fine on time here, but we'll get to we have one more speaker for our question and comments.
So someone asked about duplicated and unduplicated counts over several programs. So if you are using our automated filters, it is always going to be taking only one participant ID at a time. So if they were in multiple programs and you filtered by that one program, you would get that entry for that program. If you were trying to run both programs at a time, it would only take the person one line for that person that was the most recent. So if you wanted to include them twice in the same report, you would need to manually add them back in.
Yeah, thanks. And that's actually a good segue in terms of that there are some limitations to what we've been able to accomplish with current resources in terms of the Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully it's a really useful tool for people, but we could see, and of course I've noted ourselves out, there are some things bigger and better that it could do if we were able to put more into it. But now actually we're going to have Kyle Choi speaking to us about another some of how somehow San Diego has conquered that by using another system that frankly is not free. And so we wanted to make sure to provide this free option, and for perhaps very large counties or other situations, perhaps what Kyle's going to be talking about might be a better option or something like it.